I divorced my husband because he cheated on me with my sister when I was pregnant. My world crumbled when I discovered that my husband and sister had betrayed me while I was in the hospital delivering our child. To make matters worse, they sent me a photo flaunting their betrayal. Now, my sister is pregnant and desperately seeking forgiveness, as my ex-husband has completely abandoned her. My sister Jessica 34F and I 33F have always had a turbulent relationship marred by constant rivalry. It's essential to acknowledge that my perspective might be biased due to our contentious history. From an early age, Jessica felt the need to outdo me in everything. She would join every club or sport I was involved in, always striving to surpass me. Whether it was debate, chess, or any other activity, she was determined to be better than me. I had a particular passion for a sport that I had been dedicated to since childhood. As I grew older, I invested countless hours in practice, becoming quite proficient and earning numerous awards. At 16, Jessica unexpectedly decided she wanted to compete in the same sport. Our parents, surprisingly, allowed it despite her lack of commitment to practice. She often mocked me during training sessions and belittled my skills. On the day of the competition, it was evident to everyone that she wasn't as skilled as the other participants. Despite this, she had high expectations of winning a significant title. Unfortunately for her, I secured the top spot. Our parents were overjoyed. But Jessica threw a fit in front of everyone, crying and causing a scene, which embarrassed our parents who had to take her out of the venue. Back home, our parents gently tried to explain that everyone has unique strengths and that she didn't need to compete with me in everything. They assured her of their pride in her, regardless of whether she won an award or not. However, Jessica lashed out at me and broke my award in a fit of rage. This incident was deeply hurtful because I had worked extremely hard to earn those accolades. Our parents reprimanded her and sent her to therapy, but she refused to address her jealousy and resentment towards me. As we grew older, her behavior only deteriorated. Getting ready for school each day became a nightmare. She constantly criticized my outfits and hair, telling me how ashamed she was of my appearance. For context, I have always been tall and slender with long red hair. I preferred wearing comfortable, loose clothing, unlike Jessica, who favored skirts and crop tops. Despite her comments, I knew I wasn't unattractive, as I received a lot of attention from boys. My mother would reprimand her for her mean remarks, so Jessica shifted her bullying to school, where she felt she could get away with it. She would flaunt her friendships with the popular crowd while I preferred to surround myself with genuine friends. As an introvert, I wasn't as outspoken as she was. She would stand in the hallways with her friends, judging everyone, and loudly proclaim that I wasn't her real sister and was probably adopted. At 17 during high school, I decided to start my own blog on WordPress. Despite having no prior knowledge of how the platform worked, I was passionate about writing and wanted to share my thoughts. Over time, I built an audience of 2,500 subscribers. This led to local stores approaching me to write and promote their products on my blog. Initially, they sent me products, but as my follower count grew, I started earning money from my blog. My parents were initially unaware of this, but they were pleasantly surprised when they found out I was making money from my writing. My dad assisted me in setting up a bank account under my name, with him as a co-owner until I reached the legal age, allowing me to save the money I earned for college. When my sister found out, she demanded that I share the money with her, arguing it was unfair for me to be earning while she was not. I firmly refused and told her she was welcome to try earning money herself. She attempted to get our parents to support her claim, but they sided with me. Determined to outshine me, she decided to start her own blog. Initially, she belittled my efforts, claiming writing was effortless and that she was a superior writer. However, when her subscriber count didn't grow, she became frustrated and questioned how I managed to secure brand deals on my blog. She tried to coerce me into promoting her articles on my blog, insisting that as sisters, we should share everything. I declined, partly because she had insulted my writing and partly because I didn't enjoy her writing style. After a few months of seeing no progress, she gave up on her blogging venture. When it came time for college applications, our mom, an Ivy League alumna, encouraged both of us to aim high. Jessica applied to our mom's Ivy League school and another prestigious Ivy League institution, but was rejected by both. She ended up enrolling in a local university, which was respectable but not as renowned. When I began my college applications, Jessica discouraged me from applying to Ivy League schools, asserting that if she couldn't get in, I had no chance. I pointed out my excellent grades, but she argued that my personality was not suited for such prestigious institutions. Ignoring her negativity, I applied to our mom's Ivy League school and was accepted. I was apprehensive about telling Jessica, knowing she would react poorly. My parents gently broke the news to her during a weekend dinner. As expected, Jessica did not take it well. She refused to believe I had been accepted and accused me of faking the acceptance letter. She claimed she was a better student and deserved to get in more than I did. My parents and I were exhausted by her constant antics. While I never saw her as competition, she always tried to overshadow my achievements. My dad attempted to reason with her, suggesting she could have congratulated me, and my mom urged her to seek therapy again. Jessica became furious, yelling that as the first child, she wasn't the problem and had never wanted a sibling. She stormed out of the house in the middle of dinner. After that incident, I decided to distance myself from her, realizing that as we grew older, she should have moved past her jealousy. College was a transformative period for me. I made new friends and focused on my personal growth without the constant comparison to Jessica. I engaged in activities and formed connections based on my interests rather than reacting to her attempts to outdo me. Throughout my college years, I discovered new passions and interests that were uniquely mine, relishing the freedom to be myself without the burden of perpetual competition. Despite my hopes that Jessica would find her path and embrace her individuality, our relationship remained strained. When she could no longer compete with me academically, she shifted her competitive nature to our personal lives. She began meddling in my friendships and relationships, trying to prove that she was more successful socially and romantically. Her constant need to one-up me was exhausting, and I realized that she might never change. I continued to thrive in college, pursuing my dreams and building a life independent of Jessica's shadow. The distance between us allowed me to see her behavior more clearly and understand that her insecurities drove her actions. While I wished for a better relationship with my sister, I knew that I couldn't force her to change. I focused on my happiness and growth, hoping that one day Jessica would find peace within herself and stop viewing me as her rival. My sister Jessica was always quite passive-aggressive whenever I found a boyfriend before she did. When my boyfriend Jake and I decided to move in together, she never missed an opportunity to make snide comments about our relationship. Eventually, she met a guy named Mark who seemed perfect for her, and her mean remarks began to mellow out. I sensed she had a strong desire to be the first to get married and have children, but it didn't bother me much, as I wasn't in any rush to settle down. Then, during the Christmas holidays, she announced that she was getting married in 2024, and I genuinely felt happy for her. I congratulated her and her fiancé warmly, and she hugged me for the first time in what felt like forever. I thought we had finally taken a significant step toward mending our strained relationship. In the months following her wedding announcement, life took an unexpected and challenging turn. We received a call from Jake's younger brother, Eric, 25, who had just been diagnosed with a very aggressive illness. The news was devastating, and without a moment's hesitation, we rushed to his side to offer our support. Jake was very close to his brother, and I could see the immense struggle he was going through to cope with the news. Having lost their father at a very young age, Jake and Eric were all too familiar with the pain of losing a loved one. While staying with his family to support Eric, Jake unexpectedly proposed to me one night. I was taken aback because although we had discussed marriage, I hadn't anticipated a proposal at that moment. Jake explained that he was afraid Eric might not live to see us get married, and since he loved me deeply and wanted to spend his life with me, he saw no reason to delay. I completely understood his perspective and agreed, recognizing the profound joy it would bring to Eric and the rest of the family during such a difficult time. We both decided that we weren't interested in a grand wedding with a massive guest list. Instead, we wanted a simple and intimate ceremony surrounded by our closest family and friends. His family and Eric were overjoyed when they learned of our engagement. Seeing Eric cry tears of joy and hug us both was incredibly moving. Despite the happiness surrounding our engagement, the only concern lingering in my mind was my sister's upcoming wedding. I didn't want her to revert to her competitive nature, and I believed we were mature enough to handle this situation sensibly. So I decided to call her and discuss it before informing my parents. I called her knowing she was aware of Jake's brother's health condition and shared the news about our engagement. I explained that we planned to have a small wedding this year with just close family and friends, including her, my parents, grandparents, and a few friends. My intention was to ensure she could still have her big wedding as planned, and I was not overshadowing her event in any way. I told her how much it meant to Eric that he could be part of our celebration, given his condition. However, Jessica reacted with anger. She immediately accused me of being jealous and suggested I was using Eric's illness to rush into getting married first. She claimed this was why she had always resented me since I was born. Her harsh words deeply hurt me, and I broke down in tears. I was already struggling to process Eric's illness, and now my sister refused to see that this had nothing to do with her. I told her she was the first person I had called in our family to share the news, because I thought we could finally be happy for each other, but she reverted to her old ways. Jessica shouted through the phone that I was just trying to upstage her, and the conversation ended with more pain and disappointment. As the days passed, I tried to focus on the positives. Eric's spirits were lifted by our engagement, and the support from Jake's family was unwavering. We started planning our small wedding, choosing a date that worked for everyone, and focusing on making it a meaningful day rather than an extravagant event. Jake and I grew even closer during this time, bonding over our shared goal of bringing joy to Eric and creating beautiful memories together. While Jessica's reaction weighed heavily on my heart, I knew I had to prioritize the happiness and well-being of those who truly supported us. My parents were understanding and excited about the wedding, offering to help with the preparations in any way they could. Their enthusiasm and love provided a much-needed boost to my spirits. The day of our wedding was simple yet beautiful. Surrounded by our closest family and friends, Jake and I exchanged vows in a heartfelt ceremony. Eric stood by Jake's side as his best man, beaming with pride and joy. The intimate setting allowed us to focus on what truly mattered: our love for each other and the support of our loved ones. After the wedding, we spent time celebrating with our families, sharing laughter and tears of happiness. Despite the challenges and emotional hurdles, the day was a testament to the strength of love and the power of family. As we moved forward, I held on to the hope that one day Jessica would find her peace and that we could rebuild our relationship. For now, I was content knowing that I had made the right decision for Jake, Eric, and myself. Our journey was just beginning, and with the support of those who truly mattered, I felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. My sister Jessica called me a jealous snob and declared she would never attend my wedding. In her rage, she even screamed that she wished my boyfriend had died instead of his brother, believing it would have prevented me from getting married. Her hateful words left me deeply shaken and filled with doubt about my decision. Seeking reassurance, I turned to my parents, who comforted me and affirmed that I wasn't doing anything wrong. They expressed their happiness for both their daughters and assured me they would fly down to attend my wedding, regardless of Jessica's actions. I was immensely grateful for their understanding and support, unlike the hostility from Jessica. Our wedding took place the very next day, and it was everything Jake and I had envisioned: small, intimate, and filled with love. We captured beautiful moments with his brother, and everyone present radiated genuine happiness for us. When I shared some of our wedding photos on social media, I received an unexpected call from Jessica. Hoping she might extend an olive branch, I answered, only to be met with demands that I delete the photos. She didn't want our friends and family to know I had married before her and insisted that I could only post my wedding pictures after her own wedding. I stood my ground and told her how ridiculous it was for her to ask me to hide my wedding. I made it clear that she could harbor as much hatred as she wanted, but I was done trying to appease her. In retaliation, she called me insufferable and uninvited me from her wedding. I calmly told her that I was fine with it and asked her to leave me alone. Jake and I continued to find joy in our marriage. Despite his high-pressure job, which prevented him from taking extended leave, he remained a devoted and considerate husband, making sure our relationship was always a priority. A few months later, Jessica married Mark as planned. Although I didn't attend her wedding due to her uninviting me, I sent a large bouquet of flowers and a note congratulating her. I saw all her wedding photos and felt genuinely happy for her. However, just a few weeks after their marriage, my mother called with troubling news. Jessica had been unfaithful to Mark with a coworker, and he had found out. This led to a huge scandal, and the blame fell squarely on Jessica. She attempted to justify her actions by claiming she wanted an open marriage, but Mark had refused. Ultimately, Mark applied for an annulment, unable to stay with her. We all felt sorry for Mark, who had seemed genuinely in love with Jessica. As if this scandal wasn't enough, we were hit with another blow. Eric passed away. Jake and I rushed to be there for the funeral, and he was a complete wreck throughout the ordeal. Something inside Jake seemed to break, and he was never the same after that. He became distant and unloving, quick to anger over small things, and often lashed out at everyone around him. I urged him to seek grief counseling, but his behavior persisted. He eventually stopped going to work and was fired. He spent his days in pajamas, playing video games, or watching sports. During this tumultuous period, I worked 12-hour shifts as a paramedic, becoming the sole breadwinner in our household. I tried my best to communicate with Jake, but he never took me seriously. Counseling and therapy proved ineffective as he refused to engage with them meaningfully. I started to notice peculiar behavior when he began hiding his phone from me, something he had never done before. This secrecy made me increasingly suspicious. He frequently inquired about my work schedule, and when Jake came home from work, it was always the same story. He found any excuse to stay out late, barely acknowledging me and never bothering to ask how my day had been. His nights were filled with spending sprees, indulging in expensive dinners and flashy new gadgets for himself. During this time, I discovered I was 3 months pregnant. My periods had stopped, but I thought it was just the stress of work. Pregnancy never even crossed my mind. When I finally told Jake the news, his reaction was cold and detached. I told him right then and there that if he didn't want to be a father, he was free to leave. He assured me he was happy about the baby, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't sincere. My pregnancy was a relentless nightmare. Severe sickness took over my life, and I unintentionally neglected Jake even more. I couldn't work for 4 months and had to stop seeing my friends. Diagnosed with hyperemesis gravidarum, the symptoms were unbearable. My parents had to step in to help with household chores since I was too unwell to do anything. Despite everything, Jake found a job and was supporting us, but the tension between us grew. I reassured him that once the baby was born, I would return to work because I hated being stuck at home. Our arguments became more frequent. He called me lazy and dramatic for not keeping up with the house, even though I was constantly in pain. Then came the day my water broke. I called Jake 12 times, but he didn't answer. Desperate, I sent him a text saying I was about to give birth and he needed to meet me at the hospital. My parents rushed me there, and as I lay in the hospital bed writhing in pain, I received a notification on my phone. My mother, who was holding my hand, checked the phone thinking it might be Jake. Her eyes widened in shock as she read the message. I demanded to know what it said, and she reluctantly handed me the phone, looking heartbroken. When I opened the message, I saw a picture of my sister Jessica and Jake lying in bed together. Jessica had sent a message saying, "Good luck being a single mom because I've taken your husband." I was utterly stunned and furious. I called Jake and he answered on the 4th ring, sounding nonchalant. I screamed, demanding to know what he was doing with my sister. He coldly confessed that he had fallen in love with Jessica. He explained that she had supported him through tough times after his brother's death, and their relationship had developed into an affair over several months. He admitted he wanted to keep it a secret until after I gave birth, but Jessica didn't want to lie anymore. She had chosen this moment to inflict maximum pain. Jake started to apologize, but I cut him off. I didn't care about his excuses and told him I would see him in court. Infidelity was something I couldn't tolerate, and even though my heart was shattered, the man I loved and the father of my child had betrayed me with my own sister. I refused to let this break me. I cried throughout my delivery from the heartbreak and pain, but thankfully, despite everything, my daughter Emma was born healthy. Later, my dad couldn't stop staring at my baby, his granddaughter, with a mix of sorrow and love in his eyes. In the days that followed, I felt like my world had turned upside down. The betrayal was a heavy weight on my chest, but I had to stay strong for Emma. My parents were my rock, providing unwavering support. I began to prepare for the inevitable confrontation with Jake. I documented everything, gathered evidence, and sought legal advice. The pain of his betrayal was deep, but the thought of raising Emma alone gave me a new sense of purpose and determination. Every time I looked at Emma, I saw a future where she would be loved and cherished, free from the deceit and betrayal that had marred my relationship with Jake. I was resolved to build a better life for us, one where trust and love were paramount. My journey was just beginning, and despite the heartache, I knew I had the strength to move forward and create a new chapter for me and my daughter. After Emma was born, my family and friends rallied around me, offering their congratulations and unwavering support. I made sure everyone knew what Jessica had done, showing them the damning picture she had sent. My parents were outraged and immediately called Jessica to tell her she was no longer part of the family. They declared her actions unforgivable and said she should never contact them again because they were ashamed of her. Jessica tried to defend herself, claiming she and Jake were in love, but my father cut her off, stating that she was cut off from their lives and their will. We blocked her on all our phones and social media. Some of my cousins and relatives sent her harsh messages, and I did nothing to stop them. Her betrayal needed to be addressed. I also informed Jake's mother about his infidelity, and she was heartbroken. She tried to talk some sense into him, but it was too late. I was resolute about ending our marriage, and nothing was going to change my mind. I packed up all my belongings and moved back in with my parents. Jake tried to approach me, saying he had realized his mistake after speaking with his mother, but I refused to even look at him. I didn't allow him to see our daughter until the court approved it, as I didn't trust him around her. What he and Jessica had done was utterly deranged, and I wanted to shield Emma from their toxic influence. Living with my parents, I sought out a reputable lawyer and filed for divorce. During the proceedings, Jake tried to dodge paying alimony, but the judge saw through his excuses and held him accountable for his infidelity. I was granted primary custody, and he was only allowed supervised visits with our daughter. My lawyer presented evidence of Jake's depression and aggressive behavior, which further solidified my case. 8 months have passed since my divorce from Jake. He regularly sends child support but rarely visits our daughter. He has made several attempts to apologize, but I pay no attention to him. I return to work to provide for Emma, with my mother babysitting her during the day. In the evenings, I take over. Emma is the reason I have been able to stay strong and keep moving forward. Yesterday, unexpectedly, I received a call from an unknown number. When I answered, I was shocked to hear Jessica on the other end. She had been blocked from my contacts for months. Jessica begged me not to hang up, explaining she had been trying to reach me for a long time and finally decided to call from a friend's phone. I told her firmly that I had nothing to say to her and asked her not to contact me again. However, she quickly revealed that Emma was going to have a brother soon. A wave of shock, disbelief, and anger washed over me. I demanded an explanation, and she confessed she was pregnant with Jake's child. She pleaded for forgiveness, saying that for the sake of her unborn baby, we should reconcile our differences. I coldly told Jessica that I didn't care if she was pregnant, I wanted nothing to do with her. Hearing this, Jessica began to scream, accusing me of turning our family against her and cutting her off. She said Jake refused to accept her pregnancy and was pressuring her to have an abortion, leaving her isolated and desperate. I couldn't help but laugh at her pleas, reminding her how she had chosen to sleep with my husband while I was pregnant. As she continued to rant, I felt an unexpected sense of satisfaction. Her betrayal had come full circle, and she was now facing the consequences of her actions alone. Since that call, I've discussed Jessica's situation with my friends, receiving mixed reactions. Some believe I'm right to cut her off, while others think I might be too harsh, knowing firsthand how difficult it is to be alone during a pregnancy. So here I am on Reddit, seeking an unbiased opinion. Am I the asshole for refusing to forgive my sister after she slept with my ex-husband and shattered my life? Update 1. I've received a lot of feedback, and it's given me much to consider. I want to clarify that I hold Jake equally responsible for what happened. The reason Jessica's betrayal hurt more is because she has always competed with me. All I ever wanted was a big sister to look up to, but I got a sister who was a bully. I will never forgive her no matter what anyone says. However, I will talk to my parents and make it clear that they are welcome to have a relationship with Jessica and her child if they choose. Update 2. It's been 3 months since my last update. I apologize for the delay, but I've been busy with work and taking care of Emma. For those who have asked, she is thriving and brings me endless joy. Jake rarely visits her, and I honestly don't mind. When Emma grows up, I will explain everything to her, but for now she is happy with me and my parents. Regarding the main update, I informed my parents that Jessica is pregnant. They were as shocked as I was. I explained that Jake is the father and wants nothing to do with her. My mother cried, and seeing my parents so distressed was heart-wrenching. My father eventually called Jake for a direct conversation. Jake admitted that after our divorce, Jessica lost interest in him and moved on to other men, which left him hurt. When she later told him about the pregnancy, he suggested she reconsider. However, Jessica insisted she wanted to be a mother, just like me. Jake said he would pay child support, but wanted no relationship with the child. This revelation made my parents realize that Jessica was still trying to compete with me. It was exhausting, and I didn't want Emma to grow up in such an environment. I told my parents they could have a relationship with Jessica if they wanted, but they seemed hesitant. I've also started looking for a new place for Emma and me to live, away from this ongoing drama. Update 3. Hi, Redditors. I am updating this after 6 months. Thank you to everyone who has followed my story and offered advice. Life has improved significantly, and I have found a new home for Emma and me. We are settling in well, and I am focused on providing her with a stable and loving environment, free from the toxic drama Jessica brings. Thank you all for your continued support and encouragement. After moving out of my parents' house, Emma and I have settled into our own place. It feels liberating to finally have my own space, though being a single parent is challenging. I've hired a babysitter to look after Emma while I'm at work, which has helped me manage my daily responsibilities. Jessica recently gave birth to her son, and my mother was the only family member who visited her. My father refused to go. During her visit, my mother expressed the family's deep disappointment in Jessica's actions and made it clear that the only reason she came was for the sake of the child. Jessica pleaded for forgiveness, but my mother told her that our relationship with her was irreparably damaged. While it must have been painful for my mother to cut ties with her daughter, Jessica's betrayal was too significant to overlook. My father remains adamant in his decision to have no contact with her. Despite the estrangement, my parents continue to be a pillar of support for Emma and me. They visit us regularly on weekends, offering their help and love. Jake now pays child support for both Emma and Jessica's child, which is a source of deep embarrassment and frustration for me. I've spent countless nights crying alone, struggling to come to terms with the betrayal I experienced. To cope, I've started therapy, knowing that healing will take time and effort. Living on my own has been a mix of challenges and rewards. Watching Emma grow and thrive brings me immense joy, even as I navigate the difficulties of single parenthood. My parents' unwavering support has been a lifeline, and I am deeply grateful for their presence in our lives. As I move forward, I remain committed to creating a stable and loving home for Emma, determined to build a brighter future for us both.